Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm stood on the side of the Lek Dike between eZesty and Amerongen. It's a road I've ridden many times in the past. Today marks a weird day. 14 years ago, I won a bike race today on the comeback from glandular fever. And 4 years ago, I started a brand new career after a world of cycling and wanting to be a bike rider for a life. The last 4 years has been quite interesting. Challenging, perhaps, but interesting, definitely. 4 years of learning. It's probably the best way of summarising it. You forget how busy the roads are when you go somewhere where you haven't been for a while. In my head, this is always just a dead, quiet road. I used to ride here a lot. I used to train here, maybe not daily, but not far off it, just because it was a nice, quiet, relatively. It is rush hour right now. People are on the way to work. Not everyone's on holiday like I am. It was just a nice road to ride. Not too much traffic, no interruptions, and it also was hosted on one of my absolute favourite bike races, the Ronde van Midden-Nederland, what I refer to as my home race because I spent so much of my youth riding bikes and racing here. There is nothing quite like the excitement of heading towards the Lek Dike, having ridden through the Hovelrug, the Hovelrug, my goodness me, it's a mouthful right now, and expecting and anticipating wind. Like, it's relatively narrow when you have 200 bike riders trying to race down here, and when you're expecting a crosswind or a tailwind, it's just the most exciting amount of anticipation in a bike race, hoping that it's just going to be carnage and that you have to be in the first 8 to 12 riders to fit on the road. This is quite a wide stretch. It does get narrow in places. And then the disappointment of hitting a headwind and everyone just cruising along gently. Although equally, that's quite interesting because headwinds can be nervous times as well. Everyone's riding next to each other really close, really tight. We're going to go head over to the Hovelrug. There's some amazing engineering along here. It turns out you're not allowed to ride with a camera in your hand in the Netherlands. So you have to pull over to the side of the road and it's going to be really hard to get clips. I only learnt that after my ride last week. Lucky I didn't do that, of course. Right, we are going to head up to Amerongen. And when I say we, I mean me, my bike and the camera, which is you guys. And we'll see what the ride's like. Believe it or not, right now we are going up a climb. We're not going to gain much elevation here today. I think the top is somewhere between 50 and 80 metres, I can never actually remember. And we're going up the wrong side. We're going up the Amerongen side of the Amerongen, which is not the way you should ever ride this climb. I recently saw the other side described as one of the most beautiful climbs in the Netherlands, which I think is completely wrong because the Netherlands has some beautiful climbs. And whilst this one's nice, it's only relatively nice. Like it's a road with a bike path, a little S-bend in the middle. I wouldn't describe it as beautiful, but I think the proximity of it to Utrecht makes people think it's better than it is because they can actually get to it. So many better climbs. Some of them in Veenendaal, some of them in Limburg, Amstel Gold. The Netherlands has some amazing climbs. Like, it backs onto the Ardennes in the south, and they are really hard and they are really nice as well. But if you're here, it's not bad. I just probably wouldn't recommend searching for it, expecting a beautiful climb. I first came here, I think in the year 2000, as part of the Yoke Tour Achterveld. So 22 years later, I cannot help but think about all of the experiences in the period between then and now, and how I feel about them. Back then, all I wanted to do was do many of the things I went on to do. But equally, right now, I kind of feel, was it worth it? Was it worth that amount of energy? And that's a very difficult question to answer for lots of reasons. Never simple, is it? It's never a straightforward answer. some of the experiences have been beyond my wildest dreams. And in fact, my job right now, things like that are absolutely amazing, but the amount of energy and the cost at which it came to do it, I sometimes wonder how life might have been had I pursued something else. It wouldn't have been as fulfilling, that's for sure. So I can't complain. Like, I woke up every single day motivated and driven. And I think actually in life that's probably the most important thing, isn't it? That you do something that you're truly motivated to do and that you love it. Right, look, that is the top. 69 metres, there you go. Wasn't far off with 80 or 50. Now we're going to go down the other side. We would have been stood huddled over there, weight huddled, like kids are, hanging around, waiting for the time trial to start, the hill climb time trial, which was like 2 and a bit minutes, maybe 3 minutes back then. It was good fun. It was always like a nerve-wracking experience, standing there waiting for the start, just like any hill climb or time trial. Yeah, it's not a very big climb at all. And it's really busy, but it is rush hour. How often do I ride in rush hour? People have to commute quite far from here, I would have thought, to get to wherever they're going, because we're out of the countryside. These roads are good in a bike race as well. Properly exciting, nervous, narrow, twisty. And also people get nervous about the undulations. Like, it's really not hilly. You've seen that climb. But it's enough that can sap energy out of legs if they're tired. And I think that's why people get nervous, is you can have a little anaerobic dig and it is enough just to take the edge off ever so slightly. Like, there's no rhythm on these climbs. If the group slows down and then accelerates really hard, it's going to be very, very hard. I like these roads, they're exciting. I'd like to add that I think I'm probably not alone in questioning, have I done the right thing in my life? Like, to this point, I think it's quite a normal thing for people in their 30s and maybe their 40s that they just start to wonder, did I pursue the right thing? I think on the whole, I probably did. I think I'm definitely a little bit bitter about the way my career ended. I do kind of accept that. I am just upset about it, but because it has an effect on my day-to-day life still. I need to add a tiny bit of context to why I stopped, in case you've never heard or seen. I stopped racing because my salary was halved, made it no longer viable. I have a family to support, and that's what I do still sometimes feel bitter about. Less perhaps the fact my salary was halved, more the fact that it's going to take me a long time to get back to the same sort of financial position. And I think that's the bitterness. Like, I hadn't envisaged my life panning out this way. I had a weird loose plan in my head for how I was going to start racing, and it didn't involve a huge amount of debt. And then that coupled with COVID, although that's easier to cope with because I was by far from alone. Anyway, that's the context to the bitterness. Let's get back to the video. But my whole life is from cycling, and if it wasn't for cycling, I wouldn't have my group of friends, my wife, all these things, my jobs. So I can't be that bitter about it because it's also delivered a huge amount, which is truly more than I expected. Like, I'm only here now talking to a camera because I'm riding my bike, so it is special, and I do appreciate that very, very much. We are now heading around the back of the Hoofdweg. I've changed my route slightly from my planned route. So I made a route last night which I planned to do, but quite enjoying winging it a little bit. I'm actually now going down the road in the opposite direction, which means I have a slight headwind, but I'm a little bit time conscious. I have until 11 o'clock this morning to ride my bike, or 10 to 11, but I don't really want to run it down to the wire. I'd like to get back on time and enjoy unwinding a little bit before Mikey goes off. It is a family visit, there are plenty of things to be doing. So we're going to go up here, we're going to head towards Marsbergen, then we're going to go left, back over the Hoofdweg, over the Marsberg, and then head back to Nieuwegein, IJsselstein, and home. I wasn't all that sure of where to go then, but luckily these things are just amazing. They're everywhere. If you get lost in the Netherlands, you've done something wrong. We're on the Scherpenzeelseweg. That's a mouthful, isn't it? That's what I meant the other day about roads place names, pronunciations. I think it's really important to remember when it comes to anything I ever say about my career, if I talk about business, no one has a right to a sporting career like it's a luxury. It's a true blessing, and anyone that has a career should really be very grateful for it, because it's just a very special thing. So this guy go by. And I do keep that in mind all the time. So just keep that one in mind. Doesn't mean I was ready to let it go though. It doesn't mean it ended on my terms. But I do fully appreciate that it is a luxury. And I think that's really important to remember. Sometimes I record stuff and I do wonder if I should ever stick it out or not. And I'd love to know if you think I should or shouldn't. Obviously this one's out there now. But sometimes I record things and they just sit there on a hard drive. Other times I record them and I do use them. I only try to ever put stuff out that I think might be beneficial to someone else or interesting. It's a bit of a blend, a bit of a balance. Look how beautiful this woodland is. Absolutely stunning. And it is another climb. There are so many off-road tracks, walking paths, trails, however you want to call them. It's beautiful. Ooh, on your head. I love these little roads. Racing on roads like these are amazing. Little tiny roads where the fight for position and the technical aspect of it is just as great as the physical aspect. It's so good. If you're wondering what that noise is, it's my multi-tool rattling itself to pieces in my bag. I desperately need to hurry up now. Right, let's get some food out of here. And this thing, my goodness me, don't overfill your front bags because it ruins the handling of a bike. All that weight like a pendulum swinging around at the front. Stand that down there. Pour this into there. That's going to explode in a second. Right, hopefully this has been interesting enough. It's a bit of a weird one coming out and doing this ride because, like I said, it's such a place with so many memories that it's really hard not to just think about how I would have felt back then, looking forward, and then how I feel now looking back, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a non-stop dialogue in my head, thinking about it, which is good. It's quite nice to process things, but it makes you think, or makes me think anyway. I need to hurry up. Here we go. Here's a look at the mess that's turned into. Let's crush that one a minute. That can go back in the bag. It's going to rattle around even more now, isn't it? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Going to a place where you would have had all of these hopes and dreams and then revisiting it after all of those hopes and dreams have ended. Ultimately, a sporting career is so short. People always tell you when you're young that you need to prepare for something else afterwards, and you always just dismiss it like, no, don't be silly, I don't need to do that. Ultimately, they're right, but I didn't want to say that too loudly. Can't let people think they're right. Certainly people that think they know it all. And they're trying to tell a young, motivated sports person, one day that'll all be over, you'll need to do something else. It is good advice, but I don't think any young sportsman's ever ready to hear it, because you don't want to hear about life after your sport, do you? You want to hear about how you should be training, how you should be preparing for events and things like that. But maybe one day every sports team in the world will have an obligation to provide more support. Like, there are so many teams now which focus on education as well, which is really important. Life. It's an interesting one. I need 2 hands to do it in my bag. I'm going to ride home now. I'll catch you on the way back. Now, I'm fairly certain that the road we're currently on is part of the finale of Ronde van Midden-Nederland. And if it is, it's only a few kilometres from the finish. We're not going there today, but it's nice to remember the feelings that happened in that race, those races. I've rode it quite a few times. Not everyone has a race which they can call a home race. People have races close to places of importance, but to have a race which you truly think of as a home race is really very special. Right, we have a few kilometres remaining on today's ride. I'm going to go left, the race used to go right. if it is the experiences of life that shape us to become the people we are, then it's really not such a bad thing after all, is it? Hopefully, experiences we can learn from, better ourselves from. That's the sort of thing which I think is interesting and important in life. Like, there's no point just being the same person your whole life. I've never understood what is meant by people don't change. Of course people change. People work really hard on change. Generally speaking, for the better. I think the people that don't change are the ones that are particularly lazy in a certain way, or just not interested in it. I like the challenge of improvement. I think that's what appealed to me about sport. I have no idea where I'm going to begin with editing this video. Who knows? We'll see if it's workable. Pedaling on the flat is so very much like being on the turbo trainer. You just pedal all the time and you sit down all the time. Very, very similar. Relentless. Which makes it quite tiring, but it's really good for your endurance as well. I'm now very nearly back, so I'm going to thank you for coming on this little journey with me. I have left out so much information. If you ever have any questions about anything that I talked about, generally speaking, I'm more than happy to answer them. And if I'm not, then I won't, and I'll say it. But that is all good. Luckily, there are so many services out there in the world to help us through life. Ultimately, they're services. They can only advise us, and we have to do the rest ourselves. But just having them is a huge support, and if you're willing to do the work yourself, then there is help out there to get you through things. You go through difficult periods, things get better. You go through good periods, they're amazing, you appreciate them because of the difficult times, right? That's ultimately what life is about, I think. Don't search for the highs, search for happiness. I only heard that a few weeks ago for the first time, and it's kind of made a lot of sense. Ever since I stopped racing, I've been on this endless pursuit of highs to try and replace a sporting career, but ultimately, actually, you can't replace them. So instead, start looking for happiness and the things that truly make you happy, understanding the difference. And it's quite a complex one, but I think since I've started doing that, I've noticed I have a lot more happiness, just as many highs. It's just that I see them in a very different way and I don't search for them in the same way that I was before, which is a good thing. Right, I'm back. If you're ever in the Netherlands, any of the roads that I rode today, they're all on my commute profile and they are absolutely amazing. You will really enjoy the ride if you just take a few of those roads. It's all in the centre of the Netherlands. It's all very easy to get to, public transport or by bike. See you in the next video. This one's over.